Today we're starting things off by talking about gender equality and social inclusion. Yesterday, there were a lot of discussions on a just transition. How do we make sure no one is left behind? How do we engage the private sector in the circular economy? So the next session is meant to help us answer some of those questions. So by the end of this session, we must be able to explain why a gender-focused approach to a circular economy is critical for success. And for our DMC participants, we hope that this sparks ideas for you to think about how government-led programs can be more inclusive and equitable. And for our ADB staff participants, similarly, how ADB-supported CE strategies can be more inclusive and equitable. For our first speaker of the day, Rafaela Potestades, or Ayla, she's currently the co-executive director for programs of BAI Inc. and national co-convener of the Philippine Anti-Discrimination Alliance of Youth Leaders. She is part of various gender transformative programs focused on women's political participation, sexual health empowerment, indigenous rights, and climate justice. She's also a graduate student in the Master of Arts in Women and Development Program at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and a junior legal literacy trainer of the TLF Sexuality, Health, and Rights Educators Collective. Let's welcome Ayla Potestades.
Bongga. Thanks for the lovely introduction, which I wrote. So again, I'm Ayla. I'm from Bayi, and as you've seen from my bio, most of the learnings that we've carved out of everything on circular economy and gender is from the lived experiences of the women we've talked with and youth on climate change, nature-based solutions, and also natural resource management, and also mitigating the effects of climate change and mitigation adaptation policies. So this is really focused on just exploring the idea of gender in the circular economy and really looking, as mentioned, between the linkages of the two. Okay. I was going to say next to me. So the questions you want to answer is, why do we need a gender lens in CE to begin with? How do we make it gender inclusive? And how do we avoid tokenism? So we'll first hop off different concepts of alternative economy, circular economy, feminist economy, and a just transition, and how there are frameworks that might tie together and how they are ripe for potential of sustainable development. Then we'll go to women's social positionality and mapping their lived realities in CE. So it's really just a map of where are they right now, what are they doing, and what is their situation like. And lastly, we won't, not right now, but we'll be discussing pathways to potentially closing the gender gap in CE, mainstreaming, and also strategies. So when we take a look at gender impacts of climate change, infrastructure, and unjust transitions, it's really looking into how certain things are shaped because of gender. So for example, when we take a look at humanitarian issues, when there are super typhoons, what happens in evacuation centers? How do women feel like when they are on their periods, or how do they feel like when they're taking care of their children? So if we look and if we illustrate the impact of climate change on women, there's a certain nuance to it that might be a bit more difficult. That's why during the pandemic, the first thing that women in the Philippines did when they no longer had jobs was to create their own nano businesses. They made desserts, they look into making plastic bags, anything that is possible to feed their family because their husbands lost their jobs. So there is that particular things that might be invisible right now in the circular economy, but also because the circular economy is a fairly new or fairly developing framework. So we have to also understand that when we talk about development and infrastructure, it isn't gender neutral. Women and men have distinct needs and usage patterns. So when you're talking about creating an overpass, I don't know what's the international term, but that's what we call it in the Philippines, an overpass. Sometimes that they're not designed for women who are pregnant because they might find it difficult to climb up high, or for people who are using or are wheelchair users. So there's that particular social positionality and distinct needs that is shaped not only by their gender, sexuality, but it can also be age when they're young, when they're old, because if, for example, they're indigenous or other distinct social markers. So subpar infrastructure quality or even the designing of the development project also disproportionately threatens women's and safety and well-being. So this is an interesting thing that we always discover when we work with women in the community is that there are alternative economies forming on the ground. So the knowledge that they already have is not particularly new. They've already been doing certain concepts of the circular economy from the get-go. So outside the traditional realm of productive activities, those which are paid labor, right, like being a doctor, being a farmer, being a paid employee and stuff, women have organized different transactions that are centered to certain values that are helpful for women. So for example, when we talk about the circular economy, there are some community-based economies where mothers would trade clothes, toys, and other things. And we probably have experiences of this with different mothers within the neighborhood or within their own families. So the concept of circular economy is not far. You don't need to buy something new or you don't need to use new resources just to continue with your with taking care of your family. So women would form communal loaning systems with minimal interest for caregiving needs. So for example, we know of HomeNet, which is a informal group, which is a Southeast Asian group with informal workers. And one of their local groups in the Philippines is called Patamaba, where their own community of women have loaning systems with zero interest. So when a family member dies, when a child needs to go to the hospital, there is zero interest when they do that loaning system. Granted, it's not as big, but it is helpful when you need it immediately. So there are already efforts that are grassroots that they do that are formed from them, which are locally based and community-based forms of solution that exists. So the point of that very long discussion is it is possible that there is a linkage between gender and the circular economy. And sometimes the knowledge doesn't have to be particularly new. It might come from them. So when we talk about the feminist economy, the values that come from it is that social aim over profit maximization, which slightly aligns to the discussion earlier, and there's an integration of gender context and needs. This aligns because when you talk about the circular economy, sometimes we cannot see the needs on gender-based violence, sexual and reproductive health and rights of women when it comes to climate change adaptation and mitigation. So one of the things Zoni and I talked about in the past is that a lot of individual waste collectors women find it doubly difficult because the heat stress is experienced differently by women because they have higher temperatures. So there are discussions like that that are often glossed over. So in an ideal world where we offer them these individual waste collection jobs, they might not immediately take it because of the harms associated, even with plastic polymer, on the effect of their reproductive health and organs. So there are those considerations as well. So we want to redress certain issues that they face. And again, it's tied back to the idea of sustainability and justice, right? Caring economies, and all those things that attain sustainability and gender justice. Now, we talk about the circular economy. We've talked about it over and over again. It was designed because it's something new, alternative, and something that can offer a transformative pathway to helping people towards sustainable development. It challenges traditional production and consumption practices that we're no longer accepting, just making, taking, and then just wasting, no? So this model can serve as a catalyst for achieving various sustainable development goals. Yeah, and we'll list down later why it's important to include gender in developing our own circular economies, no matter how small the initiative is. So where are women really in the circular economy? So women experience discrimination, exploitation, marginalization, oppression, subordination, a lot of words, but we'll break them down later in examples, right? And they experience experience this not just because of their gender and sexuality, but it's hyperinflated because of other cross-cutting vulnerabilities like their age, um, their class, their language, their ethnicity, and so on. And they experience this in various institutions like family, community, workplace, schools, media, churches, and states. So a brief example of this, if you compare the experiences of a woman who is white, rich, college educated, and potentially even has an MBA, in comparison to a woman who is indigenous, a lesbian, old, and living in the rural indigenous community. Who do you think would make it easier, would find it easier to create a bank account? Right? So it's a question that makes you think that the system is particularly designed for a certain identity or a majority. And this is the reality in the Philippines. A lot of indigenous communities do not have birth certificates or IDs, so they find it difficult to open a bank account, which would make it difficult if they also want to do a business that's out of just cash, right? So that's that little imagery that we commonly use when we discuss intersectionality as a concept. Now, when we talk about women's situation, according to Moser, there's a concept of gender division of labor. You probably know of this when you ask your mom, what does she do in a day? What time does she wake up and what time does she sleep? And what does she do in between? Right? So usually a woman, based on Moser's, it's not always true, there are exceptions. They hold 3 roles. They do their reproductive work, their productive role, and community role. So with the women that we've talked with for an environmental group in Mount Banahaw, the experiences they shared is that one quote is, "I'm always tired." That's a mother's job, being tired. And that hurts, right? Because that's what's happening in real life. They not only have to take care of their families who's going to school, but they also have to look for a job because the Philippines isn't an easy country to live in. They need to earn something to also supplement the earnings. And then sometimes there's a community role as well, that they do a lot of volunteering. And this is true for the community we talk with. They not only volunteer for farming, associations, for cooperative associations, but so many other things in between. And when we talked to one of the individual waste collectors, one of the things she mentioned is she volunteers to sweep the streets every day because she wants to make the streets clean for her children. So that goes to show you that sometimes these things are not innate, they are socialized. Okay. So where are women in the CE, right? When you talk about women, usually they're at the lower value type of jobs where it's recycling and collection because let's be honest, sometimes it's the easiest way to enter that particular economy. And when you talk about junk shop owners, some of them are women, but mostly they co-own it with men. And that's the study that we did with the World Wildlife Fund. So women are overrepresented in low-value, informal, and end-of-pipe roles as compared with men, and the numbers show it, that they are in higher value-added circular activities or decision-making spaces, such as industrial eco-design and circular product development. And when you take a look at it, when even in the design process disregards the perceptions of women and their experiences, sometimes they end up not using that particular product. And we all know that it's costlier, is that a word? It's more costly when we produce so many things that nobody uses. So it's important to get that buy-in from the onset because they co-design the process with you. So why, right? There are less women in STEM due to gender socialization. There's unpaid care and domestic work and multiple roles. Even in organizations that are climate-centered, a lot of the head of that organization are male because it's difficult for a woman to move forward when they have their families to think about, when they have their children to think about, or when the board just doesn't want a woman to lead. So there's barriers to decision-making and policy-making spaces as well, and there's specific gender concerns. So aside from that, UNDP also states that women make up the majority of the workforce working in the informal waste management sector, and women work often in precarious working conditions where they do waste management without gloves, they're faced with broken glass and all that kind of things. And the reality is there's still a big disconnect between the CE productive sector and the gender equality, wherein large policy-making bodies in discussion of circular economy is at best still rhetoric. So there's the perpetuation, and it matters because sometimes the things that we might create, think about, design, implement, might still be more harmful for them. Gender equality is also a sustainability pillar. How will we develop society if we forget 50% of them? And CE transition is accelerated when women are included. So in a study by the Foreign Policy Analytics back in 2020, companies with improved gender diversity on boards from 2013 to 2018 were 60%, 39%, and 46% more likely than those without to reduce the intensity of energy consumption, GHG emissions, and water use, respectively. And then gender also shapes the CE design process, right? And we've mentioned that multiple times. So the easy answer of how can we do things is very, very simple. It's to care, it's to listen, and it's to be intentional. The best thing we can do is to consult with a lot of women that experience it on the ground and be intentional when we create these consultations. Are we just validating what we believe in, or are we actually listening to what they're experiencing? So it's crucial to include that point. There should be recognition that they are agents and not just victims, and that they have contributions that are not limited to just volunteer work and should not be limited to those things, right? So this is one simple framework that we commonly use in women in development and gender studies. It's how do we view policy approaches right now. So there is that aspect of gender neutrality or gender insensitivity up until gender redistributive or gender transformative. So if we look at a policy or a program or a design, we're probably thinking, why does a road need a gender consultation? Right? There's probably thoughts like that. But when you think about it, who uses those roads? How does that road particularly affect that ecosystem? There might be livelihoods of women that live nearby that can be affected. So every move that we make, especially as big as what we're doing with ADB, really, really matters. So what we can do is look if, for example, we have gender sensitivity within our policies. So gender sensitivity can be as simple as really looking at the factors and process that shape gender relations. So for example, if you want to help individual waste collectors or women working in the circular economy as entrepreneurs, we have to look, how are their relationships with their husbands? Why are they risk averse when we talk about credit? What is gender lens investing, right? There are different ways to go about it. And really, sometimes just asking questions and consulting can help identify. For instance, in the Philippines, there are some banks that still refers the husband's signature over the wives, even if the wives own that particular asset. So it's crucial to understand these enabling factors to realize that it's not just them who's having a difficult problem, but it's really how the different social, political, and economic spaces shape their experiences when they're trying to enter the circular economy. So the ultimate goal is we want to be gender transformative, wherein women are active agents of change with key capacities to contribute. We enable them biodiversity monitoring, identifying the nature-based and community-based solutions that they have, listening to how sometimes having daycare centers might push the care work to a later time, but might be helpful as a gap solution right now. So there are different ways to go about it. And I do know that ADB also has its own targets and indicators that we can look into called Accelerating Gender Equality 2019-2024, which lists different standards that we can use. For example, the number of women enrolling in TVET or in technical vocation education, enrolling are more women scientists, or the types of finances and loans that we give to women and the interest and percentage that we afford them, and all those kinds of targets and indicators that ADB has. I'm sure ADB has done many studies about this. I love their gender team. And they know how it also affects women when we do projects as big as this one. So I do know that I only have a couple of minutes left, so I'll quickly just also go through this. So applying a gender lens requires integrating it in our circular economy concepts, right? So sometimes it's as simple as understanding consumer behaviors. We might want to push women to use what do you call this, menstrual cups, right? But a lot of indigenous and cultural and religious individuals are not comfortable with that because they are still comfortable with pads. There's also concepts of integrating lessons learned from traditional sustainable practices. Indigenous women have many nature-based solutions integrated in their knowledge, like which type of tree sucks out the water from the watershed, right? Or which particular plants work within our area that does not harm the ecosystem and provides us income-generating livelihood. And leveraging local value chains for sustainability. So there's already an existing local value chain more often than not. It's really studying how it works and integrating the concept of a circular economy, which would not only ensure a just transition for all, but would also inform how to make the new economic paradigm operational and sustainable. Yes, she's ending with a little quote and with a little poem. To all those fighting for gender equality, around me the trees stare in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches, and they call again. It's simple, they say, and you two have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. So sometimes gender is intimidating, it sounds scary, but as I mentioned earlier, it's being intentional and it's listening. And when you listen, you learn more. So I'm gonna end it with that. Um, these are my references.
Thank you, Ayla. That was a great presentation. The thing that stuck with me is to care, to listen, and to be intentional, and to make circular economy work for women instead of the other way around. And also, I'm shocked that in the year of 2024, women still need their husband's signature to open a bank account. Wow. Whew. That's stressful. Okay, our next speaker. So we talked about engaging the private sector and the just transition. So we have an example from a private sector and the work that they're doing to make sure that no one is left behind. Our next speaker is Maria Cecilia Alcantara, or Cecil. She's the president of Coca-Cola Foundation Philippines, the social investment arm of the Philippines Coca-Cola system. She began her career in human resources at Coca-Cola Bottlers Philippines and was part of the pioneer corporate communications team. She's also served on the boards of NGO networks and nonprofits, including the Association of Foundations, League of Corporate Foundations, Philippine Council for NGO Certification, and Caucus of Development NGO Networks. Let's all welcome Ms. Cecil Alcantara.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. In the interest of time, and so I don't forget anything, allow me to read, okay, from my notes. Okay, good morning, and thank you for inviting us to present today. When I sat in yesterday morning, I started to question what it was that I could bring to this discussion, which was focused on big things, ambitious things, policy, finance, investment, legal reforms, national frameworks, and then behavioral change, economic benefits, and ensuring a just and inclusive transition were mentioned. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe there is something I can share. Okay. Anna asked me to talk about the work of Coca-Cola Foundation Philippines, particularly on social inclusion in grassroots campaigns. I will get to that, but first, allow me to provide some context with a backgrounder on the Coca-Cola system in the Philippines, which is composed of the Coca-Cola Company, which owns the brand, Coca-Cola Beverages Philippines, which manufactures and sells the products, and Coca-Cola Foundation Philippines, the system's social investment arm. three separate entities with interlocking goals. Coca-Cola has been in the Philippines for the last 111 years. The business currently operates 18 manufacturing plants, reaching 1 million micro-retailers across the country. We operate as one system with sustainability in mind, from using clean energy, minimizing water use, and treating wastewater in the manufacturing sites, to delivering our brands. The Coca-Cola Company made a comprehensive review of the highest sustainability priority topics affecting not only the company, but also its stakeholders, which includes the communities it serves. The review led to these global sustainability goals, which serve as guideposts to navigating towards sustainability in the fields that matter most to the company and its stakeholders: water stewardship, product portfolio, packaging, climate, sustainable agriculture, people, and communities. Today, let me zoom in on packaging, people, and communities in relation to circular economy. As a global beverage company, the Coca-Cola Company is focused on the entire packaging life cycle and recognizes its responsibility to help solve the global plastic packaging waste issue. The company believes developing a circular economy for our packaging is the most impactful way to address waste and climate issues. In 2018, years before the passing of the EPR law in the Philippines, the Coca-Cola Company launched World Without Waste globally, with the goal of collecting and recycling every bottle or can for each one the company sells by 2030. The ambitious Sustainable Packaging Initiative focuses on three key areas: design, collect, and partner. Let me share with you some concrete examples of what is happening in the Philippines. On design, Coca-Cola Beverages Philippines, or CCBPI, keeps approximately 50% of its business in RGB, that's returnable glass bottles. Don't see them much in the very urban areas, but they mostly are in the sari-sari stores, the small stores in the barangays. In addition, CCBPI has transitioned to paper straws for Tetra Pak drinks. It has phased out single-use sachets, sunsetting the popular powdered juice brand 8 O'Clock, and changed the iconic green Sprite bottle to clear, making it easier to recycle. We also now use bottles made of 100% recycled plastic for Coca-Cola Original and Wilkins Pure. All these business decisions were made in order to achieve circularity in packaging and eventually achieve a world without waste. On collect, CCBPI partnered with Indorama Ventures, I think that was mentioned yesterday by Nanette, to establish the first ever largest bottle-to-bottle recycling facility in the Philippines. Pet Value has been operating since 2022 in Cavite and has the capacity to recycle about 2 billion PET bottles every year. Of course, the company cannot do this alone. To drive collection, it is important to get consumers on board. And to drive engagement, the company launched the May Ikabobote Pa, or in English, Our Bottles Can Have Many Lives, campaign last year, to encourage and educate more consumers to recycle PET bottles and aluminum cans. This QR code is now printed on all Coca-Cola packaging and directs you to a website where you can learn how to recycle and where to bring PET bottles for collection. In the website, you will see over 120 collection sites nationwide. CCBPI filed the company's EPR program in February last year, and I'm pleased to share that as of the end of the year, the company was able to divert more than 20% of the plastic waste produced in 2023, following the mandate of Republic Act 11898. And finally, on partner, the company's business partners are all important players in the drive, not just to collect recyclable packaging, but to educate grassroots on recycling. Tindahan Extra Mile is a program for micro-entrepreneurs such as sari-sari stores, transforming their stores into PET collection sites to reach the grassroots market in small barangays. It provides educational campaigns to households on the importance of segregation and recycling and incentives to small business owners to increase their income. Let's watch this video of Lori de Guzman as she shares her story as one of the 3,000 Tindahan Extra Milers nationwide.
Ako po si Lori P. de Guzman, 5 months na akong member ng Tindahan Extra Mile. Malaki na naitulong sa akin at sa negosyo ko nang sumali ako sa Tindahan Extra Mile.
Kasama ang Best at Pasko, binibigyan ng pagkakataon ng Coca-Cola Philippines ang mga sari-sari store owners sa bansa na madagdagan ang kanilang kita sa pamamagitan ng pagkolekta at pag-recycle ng mga PET bottles gamit ang naiipong environmental points sa ilalim ng Tindahan Extra Mile.
Noon, sa isang sako lang namin nilalagay, tapos inaantay na lang namin na dumaan yung truck ng basura. Sa amin kasi dati, lahat yan kalat eh. Pero ngayon, natuto na rin kami. May segregation ang nangyayari. Saka at the same time, yung mga customer din namin, natuto na sila kung paano itapon yung basura. Laging malinis yung paligid namin. Siyempre, nakatulong na rin kami sa, hindi lang sa amin, no, pati na rin sa barangay namin. Isa sa mga benepisyo na nakuha namin dito, yung points, nakakatulong para mabili namin yung mga ibang paninda namin.
Okay, now let me tell you about our work with people and communities. Coca-Cola Foundation Philippines' contribution to the partnership pillar. The mission of Coca-Cola Foundation Philippines is to be a catalyst for sustainable development and well-being in Filipino communities. We work with non-government institutions to deliver programs on water stewardship, waste management, education, and disaster response. We began supporting projects on waste management in 2018, when the company announced its vision for a world without waste. It has been an uphill journey, lots of challenges, but a lot of learning too, in working with our partners on grassroots programs. We began by exploring different solutions on waste management, from education to and advocacy to upcycling initiatives like coastal cleanups, turning bottles into eco-bricks, weaving sachets into wallets, until we learned that we could do more to improve circularity. Now we focus on collaborating with NGOs and LGUs for more sustainable waste management systems in communities, particularly to contribute to the effective implementation of Republic Act 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act. We scale up and replicate sustainable solutions in small barangays, also adapting to the varying contexts of coastal and island communities. We provide materials recovery facilities, proper equipment, and training of community leaders to encourage segregation at the household level. That will then lead to higher recycling rates and, most importantly, save our seas from plastic pollution. From these projects, we learned that proper context in the waste management system is important to instill behavior change in communities. As of 2023, we have supported communities in these provinces through strong partnerships with our champion NGOs. These NGOs work directly with the community and collaborate closely with the respective barangays or local government units. Sustainability of these waste management programs require the collaboration of all sectors in the area, from government to NGOs, and of course, most importantly, the participation of people in the community. People are at the core of the Foundation's work. Improving people's lives is our reason for being, and there's a group of people that is special to us. Waste workers are often invisible in our communities, even while they have played the most vital role in keeping plastics out of our waterways by collecting and trading our discarded plastics for decades. They are at risk of losing their livelihood when the circular economy eventually kicks in, and they will have less and less plastic to collect and trade. That is why we started a project with PBSP in the community of waste informal waste workers in Montalban, Rizal. Most families live there because they were relocated from their homes and have lost their initial sources of income. In this project, we focused on implementing community development assistance with a holistic approach. We wanted to learn from them and understand their needs. We worked with PBSP to deliver training, well-being support, and even proper water access to 600 families in the community. Mothers like Christina in the photo attended safe motherhood workshops and were trained for urban gardening to establish their own sustainable and healthy food supply. Now they need not rely on food scraps from the landfills for their family meals. They grow a supply of healthy vegetables and fruits in their own gardens. Through this project, we gained significant insights on the conditions of informal waste workers, an important input to the development of our succeeding initiatives. With WWF and USAID Clean Cities Blue Oceans, we are implementing the Women in Waste Economic Empowerment activity in different cities in Metro Manila. We call it the WE Project. Riza is an informal waste worker in Quezon City. She used to rent her cariton or cart to collect scraps from households and garbage bags dumped on the side streets. She experienced not being welcomed in her own barangay for doing house-to-house trash collection. After undergoing training through the WE Project, she is now recognized as an official waste collector in her barangay. She also received her own bicycle and sidecar through our grant. Now she doesn't have to pay rent and has additional income for her family. Through the WE Project, we have supported 70 women waste workers with small grants, proper equipment, gender development training, and business mentoring. Some of these women have even moved on from being door-to-door collectors to junk shop owners. Some of them have started cooperatives among themselves, which now allow them to expand and grow their business. We believe that the knowledge and skills we have introduced to these women, such as health and gender training, urban gardening, financial literacy, and business training and mentoring, will enable them to cope and even thrive in a circular economy. I still have many stories to share about the importance of social inclusion and attention to the grassroots, but in the interest of time, let us watch this video and hear it from our partners and beneficiaries. Thank you very much.
Ang karagatan natin ngayon dito sa Sarangani Bay ay nagde-degrade na, nababawasan na ang kanyang kagandahan sapagkat meron tayong problema sa basura. Itong Spectrum, isa sila sa organisasyong nagbigay ng opportunity na makita kung gaano kahalaga ang dagat. Masaya kaming nagda-dive sa baba. After siguro mga 5 minutes, 10 minutes, makikita mo na yung kaibigan mo. Paramihan kayo ng basura sa baba. Napakasayang isipin na merong mga ganitong oportunidad na nabibigay sa aming mga estudyante, lalo na sa aming mga volunteers from Mindanao State University. Enjoy siya. Minsan nakakapagod naman, pero hindi ibig sabihin na titigil kami sa aming advokasya na makatulong sa kalikasan.
Dito tayo ngayon sa Baluan, mangrove area ng Barangay Baluan. Special siya dahil dito ang pinakamataas na hektarya ng ating mga mangroves dito sa General Santos City. Itong punong ito, halos ang iba dito ay pasintinyal na pang 100 years na ang iba. Siya ang pambagahari ng karagatan. Kung kaya niya i-absorb yung anong init na binibigay po ng climate change, ganun din po yung protection na ginagawa niya sa mga tao. Dapat ang mga tao po talaga ang mangalaga sa kalikasan. Kaming mga nasa dito po sa environment kung saan po kami tumitira, Malaking tulong talaga po ang Spectrum tsaka yung Coca-Cola Foundation po. Yung mga grupo po namin, yung mga member po ng association namin, nagiging aktibo sila. Kasi as a group lang po, yung sa association namin, may mga sinusunod lang po kami na activity. Bayanihan once a month, meeting once a month. Pero nang pumasok na po yung proyekto ng Coca-Cola at saka Spectrum, weekly meron na po kaming ginagawang activity. Si local government po, nalalaman na nila na nagiging active na yung grupo namin. Kumbaga, nagkikipag-tap na lang sila.
Totoo yung sinasabi na yung plastic pollution ay talagang heavily affecting our water quality. At kasama naman din sa impact ng solid waste is yung survival ng ating mga marine organism. Hindi magandang water quality, apektado yung production ng ating fishery. Very important yung partnership. Katuwang namin sila doon sa pag-address ng ating problema sa solid waste management dito sa city. Ang laking tulong nito in transforming the behavior of our communities at they themselves become responsible doon sa pagtitake care ng kanilang coastal resources.
Yung pagtutulungan po ng ating community, yung ng ating LGU, at saka yung ng Spectrum na grupo, at saka yung Coca-Cola Foundation, malaking tulong po yun para sa ating kalikasan. Yun po ang pinaka-importante po sa mga tao dito kasi yung pangkabuhayan po nila sa ating area po ng Barangay Baluan at saka Bula.
Ako po si Joanne Diaz, 29 years old, nakatira po sa Nia Road, Barangay Pinyahan, Quezon City. Nangongolekta po ng mga kalakal. Inaantay po namin ilabas nila yung mga basura nila. Kakalkalin namin yung mga pwede namin mapakinabang kalakal. Dati po, nagre-renta po kami ng sidecar. Yung dapat kita na namin, nababawasan pa po. Tinulungan po kami ng biggest. May mga sponsor po. Coca-Cola, CCBO, WWF, ARMDEF. Nabigyan po nila kami ng grants na sidecar. Tinulungan din po nila kami, kinausap po nila yung mga barangay-barangay na dito po kami mangolekta sa kanila. Dati po kasi bawal kami mangolekta. Laking tulong po to sa aking pamilya. Hindi lang po sa aking pamilya, pati po sa mga komunidad po na hinahakautan po namin ng mga basura. Yung iba po, marunong na po sila mag-segregate. Salamat po! Ang disiplina po ay magmumula sa ating sarili, hindi sa ating mga kapitbahay.
Nagpapasalamat kami sa oportunidad na ibinigay ninyo sa amin, sa tulong ninyo sa ating komunidad, sa pagbigay ng impormasyon sa mga tao.
Pag inalagaan natin ang kalikasan po, maraming sumusunod po na henerasyon na mafe-feel nila kung ano po kaganda talaga ang ating kalikasan. Kikita nila kung ano yung nagawa natin ngayon na para sa kanila. Malaking impact po yun para sa kanila.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cecil. We'd like to also invite Ayla to join us here in front. And earlier, Ayla mentioned that ADB has gender targets, and she said, I love the gender team. So we fortunately have a member of the gender team of ADB with us. So I'd also like to invite her here in front. Jinha Kim, or Jinha, supports ongoing operational and knowledge work in the ADB Gender Equality Division to strengthen gender and climate nexus. With over 10 years of professional experience, Jinha's career has encompassed roles ranging from gender specialist to grant program and project management specialist in the areas of climate change, inclusive governance, human rights at international organizations. So before we open the floor for question and answer, we invited Jinha to share just some of the initiatives being done in ADB in terms of gender. So over to you.
Well, thank you for the introduction and good morning, everyone. Well, it was my pleasure to hear from Rafaela that she loves our team. And also it was very nice to see Cecile's project that actually involves women as a change agent. So I would like to introduce a little bit about ADB's Gender and Climate Nexus and what we are doing at this moment. So ADB, of course, we recognize the disproportionate impact of climate change on women, especially that is more negative if the vulnerability is not effectively addressed in the country. So ADB is providing various support at various levels. For example, at the policy level, we are providing technical assistance to make the climate change or disaster management or their national NDC or NAP to be more gender responsive. So in our case, we have supported the Mongolia to develop a climate change law, which has fully integrated the gender consideration. And also we have supported the Philippines to develop the disaster risk management law with gender inclusion. When it comes to the just transition, we support women's involvement in renewable energy projects. So women need to be more well-trained and informed to be effectively participated in the renewable energy, as they are very vulnerable and easy to lose their income when it comes to the transition of energy. Also, we support the community level adaptation with our climate resilient partnership program, and gender and women are recognized as the main aspect of those programs, and we prioritize the support for women and women's engagement at the community level, and we engage them as, of course, change of agents, not only beneficiaries. These are all supported through the gender responsive climate finance. And I'm also very glad to hear that Rafaela mentioned the heat stress. So we recently launched our project on gender and heat stress, considering that the increasing risks of the heat impact. So that was recognized by the IPCC report. And also we realized that the increasing the heat stress is vulnerability of the women is also very affected. Therefore, we are supporting assessing the vulnerability of different segments, including women. And they are more vulnerable, according to our research, they are more vulnerable because of their social and cultural status, in addition to their difference in the physical aspect. So women, especially the pregnant or breastfeeding women, are more vulnerable to the heat stress. So those resilience are being supported. And also we are trying to support the community with finding community-led or women-led solutions with nature-based solutions or passive cooling. When it comes to the waste management, ADB is providing support to make the project more gender responsive by engaging women and the gender consideration into designing, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation. There are many good cases of projects, including Solomon Islands or Marshall Islands or Mongolia and Uzbekistan, who provided support in developing more gender-responsive solid waste management systems. For example, these projects supported the countries in developing more gender-responsive operation and management plan or a regulatory framework. And these support women to remain at work, as they are more easy to lose their job if the waste management system is formalized or modernized. And that is well explained by Rafaela, so I'm not going to repeat. And also, when we support the development of infrastructure or services, we also provide the assistance to consider the gender aspects. As women are the end user, and they are usually the one who they are the first user at the community or household level. So we are trying to design the access point of waste collection to be more friendly to the women. And also the services with the women needs equipment or sanitation facilities are also supported. Finally, of course, the capacity development and job training, involvement of women into decision-making process are all part of our projects. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jinha, for sharing that overview of how ADB is incorporating gender in the projects and in the programs. So now I'll open the floor for questions. Please introduce yourself and let us know who the question is for specifically.
So my name is Karma. I am a principal environment specialist working in the environment team here in ADB. And I don't know if you know, currently we are in the process of updating our safeguard policy. And we are going to move to the approach being followed by the World Bank and IFC, where we will have different standards. So I am leading the update of the standard on pollution prevention. And we currently are having a lot of stakeholder consultation with different government many countries, and currently it's ongoing with India. So civil societies as well as the government agencies. And one of the questions that we are getting in relation to circular economy, and I think that's what Jinha mentioned, when women lose jobs, women and even other, I guess, disadvantaged groups, they lose jobs when we are formalizing the system and trying to, I guess, in some ways we're improving the circularity of the waste. But as a result of that, there could be, I guess, some, women or other people, social groups losing jobs. So I wanted to understand, like, what is the scale of this issue? And this particular question was asked in one of the consultations, like, what are we doing about it? What ADB is doing about it? And what can be done about this? And and I guess my second question is the solution to this to really formalize everything, or is it okay, do we just maintain and have this informal system? So I was just wondering what the solution was. And then completely unrelated, I was just curious to Ma'am Cecile, you mentioned that the bottle can be reused many times, right? So I was just curious to know, like, how many times can you use the same Coca-Cola bottle? That's a very, just out of curiosity. Thank you.
It's a good question. So let me just summarize the question. So if we understood it correctly, there's when we invest in certain measures, we lose jobs, especially for the informal sector of like women and disadvantaged groups. So what is the solution to that? And is that correct? Is that the first question?
What is the solution? And also I wanted to understand, like, what is the scale of the issue? Because
The
we're getting
scale
a
of
lot
the
of
issue.
questions on this from CSOs during the policy update. Because one of the new things that we're bringing in the standard 3, which is on pollution prevention, is encouraging following circular economy approaches. But we ourselves are still trying to figure out, exactly how we put that, like, from the safeguards perspective.
Okay. And then how many times can a bottle be reused? So does anyone, maybe Jinha or Ayla, want to take the first question on the loss of jobs and the scale of the issue?
Okay, well, thank you for your question. So yes, indeed, when we change the economy to be more climate resilient, or if you want to transit into the net zero economy, then of course women tend to be more vulnerable in terms of their income. It's because of the nature of their involvement in economy. For example, if you think about women, they are less involved in decision-making process, and they are more engaged in informal jobs. So which means they are less protected by the system. So obviously there is an evidence of, there are big risks of women being more vulnerable to that. Unfortunately, when you ask the scale, as we all know, when we do the projects or whenever we develop the policies, the first struggle that we encounter is lack of data, which means, unfortunately, although we have made a lot of efforts, the global world have made all the efforts, still we lack of a lot of sex disaggregated data, and we have not been able to see the rigorous or analysis that really gives us clear idea what is the actual the implication. So my suggestion is we continue our efforts to collect the data throughout our project implementation or policy implementation, and make sure that the gender consideration is into our design, so we can actually fit it to such analysis. And to address that, I would like to highlight that there should be a parallel efforts from not only women, but we need to engage both men and women, because we live together. It's our world, and without support from the community and their family members, it's going to be almost impossible for women to be economically empowered. So we have seen many cases of when women are economically empowered, there can be also increased risks of violence, because they are more economically empowered, they raise their voice, they try to intervene in decision making, and that is considered a threat. So I think it should be also supported together with the community awareness raising. Thank you.
Okay, so collect sex aggregated data, because there's still a lack of data, and work with men and women and other genders to make sure that there is balance and inclusion. You want to add?
So this is an interesting question because the informal work is a big and multifaceted network, right? But I think the easy answer, not the easy answer, but the more holistic answer would be to improve labor and social health laws, right? Like social safety benefits should be accessible easily. There should be universal healthcare and all the labor laws in consideration. But in particular situations, because we don't know which sector of the circular economy we're talking about, co-designing the solution is one of the things that we can explore. Because for instance, in the Philippines, there's a lot of people that collect waste and sell them. They're called junk shops, and I think it's similar in some parts of Southeast Asia. And one of the issues in their value chain is that the larger junk shops are farther away. So if you formalize it in a blanket policy and we just focus on the larger junk shops, particularly their jobs might be lost. But if we co-design the process of making the logistics easier for them through designing with them and talking with them, then that can lessen the chances of them being removed and having just transitions. So I think that's one of the things that I can imagine. But again, the circular economy is new. It's difficult to navigate right now. So it's a very valid question. But sometimes the community has solutions that they can think of. It's just a matter of facilitating that form of knowledge to come out.
Ms. Elsa, do you want to add to the answers before the bottle-to-bottle question? If you want lang.
I think they've said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you gave me the easiest question, but the hardest to answer, actually. No. Because when they do the recycling, it's mixed with different, let's say, all PET bottles of different ages, right? They're all collected. And so I need to verify which one, if it's just directly a bottle, that same bottle to be recycled. I'll get back to you on that. I'll give the answer to Anna.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. There was a question, I think, at the back. Yeah. Yes. You have time for one question at the back and then one question here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. My name is Hoa. I'm a consultant for the TI project, and I come from Vietnam. Can you hear me well?
There, better.
Okay, so I want to have the question for Rafaela. You said your presentation about the gender lens for the circular economy. So in my understanding, gender inclusion means no one left behind in the circular economy. So could you tell me the negative impact for both male and female in the circular economy? And which sector that the most impacted, the negative impacts for the female when we transfer to the circular economy? This is the first question. And for the second question, so do you have any recommendation for the policymaker in terms of preparing for circular economy transition that will protect the vulnerable groups like the women? Like, do you think we need to prepare for the, I think, do you think we need to equip for the, for example, for the women, like some kind of small, the new skill in terms of education to adapt with the circular economy? Thank you.
Okay, so the question is, what are the possible negative impacts of the circular economy on women and men, right? And if there are recommendations for policies to avoid that or to mitigate the negative impacts. It's a great question.
Great question, which is also interesting because I wish we could do more studies in particular to circular economy, but a lot of studies that we do focus more on nature-based solutions and natural resource management. So I'll nuance my answers to that. And that's where I see where the vulnerability lies. Because usually, and this is a canned argument when we talk about nature tech, sometimes it leaves the most vulnerable, vulnerable because of the question earlier. there's no just transition. So people get left behind when things are formalized. But the question of who in particular, I would say, of course, are informal workers. So informal workers, some might, in some particular areas, because it's also different depending upon the locality, might be more men, might be more women, but they have less means to transition into careers. So mitigating policies might be different. For example, in the Coca-Cola example, there are income generating skills capacity training where we transition from, for example, collecting plastic waste to producing plastic bags or something of that cycle of the plastic that we can consider. And the other groups that are vulnerable, of course, is when we're thinking of circular economy, large projects where we're thinking of infrastructures using tawag dito, creating roads with, I forgot the term, biomimicking, I think that's the term, biomimicking cement might affect certain groups living in that particular ecosystem. So sometimes people might be indigenous groups, there might be ancestral domains that were being hit. And I think this is nuanced to the Philippines with indigenous peoples. So for us, there are a lot. And in some situations when we're thinking of infrastructures and buildings, those are the things that are affected. There's a lot more. There's when you talk about workplace discussions, a lot of women who are trying to go up, who are trying to get investments for their circular economy businesses might not get particular investments because of investor perception of stereotypes where women would give birth, so it might not be as profitable. So informing investors as well can be a good tactic. So big question. If you notice the way I was answering talking earlier so fast because there's so many things to cover. But we can talk later for your particular situation.
Yeah, so it's context dependent. So we're at almost 10 o'clock, so we'll just have a quick question and quick answer.
Anna. Yeah. In Indonesia case, we also have a program called it Waste Bank. Waste Bank is you know that Waste Bank is a waste collection facilitation that mostly more than 60% the board member of the Waste Bank is a woman. The number of Waste Bank in Indonesia is huge, more than probably 70,000. But however, the activeness of the waste bank is very low. Probably no more than 50% of waste bank is not working well. And I just want to know how you can, based on your project, maybe you can share how you treatment and then how you monitor your program, because in Indonesia the gender issue is not prioritized yet. And then can you share maybe we can learn and replicate how to monitor, how to evaluation during your project about the gender issue. Thank you.
That's for Ms. Cecil.
Or Pele. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's tired na daw.
Yeah, so targets and indicators are also an interesting discussion because with individual waste collectors or waste management, it can differ with your project if you're using equipment or if you're particularly targeting individual waste collectors. It could be how long do they stay in the program, how many times are they absent, and what are the reasons why they're being absent, those kinds of things. Do they want to certify, or do they want to get more education? Are they being put into decision-making tables when it comes to project management or talking about next steps or the directions of the project? So many different targets and indicators. Sorry, my mind is going overload right now. So those are the things that are top of mind. But the ADB does have a good system of targets and indicators. Might not be nuanced to circular economy, but the economy nevertheless can be a good start to investigate. But Ms. Cecil, I think.
In terms of monitoring, really we just, because our projects are small, you get 100 women only. So it's mentoring, just monitoring how much they're able to collect, how much income they have raised from their collection, and things like that. No, so that's what's reported back to us. Because for us, because it's our contribution to the World Without Waste agenda, our number one metric is the waste collection, how much waste they have collected. But with the foundation lens, we add on how much were we able to improve their well-being. Are they able to eat properly already? Are their health conditions improved? Are their incomes improved? Are their children going to school? So that's what we look for.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion.